Hi, and welcome to the September edition of Cinetopia. I'm Paul, director of the Edinburgh Short Film Festival, and I'm here today with Amanda, co-founder of Cinetopia. Amanda, how's things with Cinetopia this month?
Great. We just had a film battle, the first ever film battle between Cinetopia and Cinema Attic. We brought some Italian short films. We also brought some Italian food by Maremma, Wild Maremma, and Spain Cinematic brought some short films, and there was a live vote, and unfortunately we lost.
So this was like an Italy versus Spain.
Yeah, it was sort of like a film event. It was supposed to be fun, but we kind of had this live voting aspect of it. So there was a bit of a competition. There was a lot of people there. I think everyone seemed to enjoy it. There was a lot of beer, Italian and Spanish. So I think people really had a good time, good food. So hopefully we'll be doing it again.
Great. So what, you're going to find two other countries to
I think perhaps maybe Greece. It's really good.
Scotland v England.
Scotland versus England. There's a good one. Lots of options. French versus Spain. Who knows?
That's true. Yeah. So the world's your oyster, literally.
Exactly.
USA v Canada. Would that be? But so it was a great success, and now live voting. That was quite an interesting thing. How did that actually work?
Yeah. So there's multiple different kinds of things you can do online, but basically after every film there was you went to a certain URL, and actually Annie was coordinating that, and we could see live how many people were voting. So as the evening went on, there were more votes for films, which I think was not in our favor, because we averaged around a 3.5 for Italian films, and I think the Spanish films were more in the lines of 4s. So
did you have a separate vote for the food?
Yes, we did.
Okay, and who won that?
Italy won that.
Wow.
But it's Italian food, so it's hard to beat. Both were really great, and I still go with Moretti over Estrella any day. So
fair point. Okay, great. Also, I'm with Jim Ross, the managing editor of Take One. Jim, so Take One, what's been happening in September with the magazine?
All the film festivals are happening. They kind of swamped under with writing from various different festivals. So there's been Venice, Toronto, there's a lot of really small ones happening around Scotland. Before our next show, there's the Scottish Queer International Film Festival. Take One Action is kicking off. You'll hear about that as well. Basically just a whole bunch of them, and then there's the London Film Festival right at the end of the month, so we'll be covering quite a lot of that. But basically it is film festival season, so it seems they all hit. And of course right at the end of that there will be the Edinburgh Short Film Festival.
That's right,
which we're covering.
October 24th we're starting. So you're going to Cambridge as well, I believe, for the Cambridge Film Festival?
Yes. I think that'll probably be our main one. I'll go down to Cambridge for a few days of that, but that's the one. Actually we covered more from Glasgow this year, but historically that's the one we do the most at, because of course that's where we started.
Yes, great stuff. And you're looking forward also to covering. Are you going to the London Film Festival?
We have people going. I'm not going myself. I've got access to the digital viewing library for it, though, which I think is a very good thing. So you can see some of the smaller films remotely and cover it remotely. Edinburgh International Film Festival did the same thing. So I'll be doing that, and I'll probably see some of the smaller films that way. But we've got two people who will actually be there in London for us covering some stuff as well. Great stuff.
So a lot of writing ahead, late nights, coffee.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Great stuff. Great. And I'm also here with another of our regulars, Anni Asikainen, co-founder of Cinetopia. Annie, what have you been up to?
Right, so we've been running a lot of Cinetopia events for Scalarama. We had our first one was a documentary by Kazuhiro Soda called Inland Sea. It was the Edinburgh premiere, not the Scotland premiere, but Edinburgh premiere of the film. It's a great observational documentary, and I think people really loved it. I love seeing it. I've seen it like 3 times now, and it's still amazing. And now next up, after the food and film fight, after being a sore loser, we're screening Bend It Like Beckham this Wednesday, so that's tomorrow. That's in Lee Theatre, and we're pairing it up with some food from Punjabi Junction, so great Punjabi stuff. Food.
Wow, that's in collaboration with Real Girl Film Club, isn't it?
Yes, that is, yeah. So Real Girl is a big factor to it. So it's because of the Women's World Cup that we wanted to screen something football-based, and, Bend It Like Beckham, it's a British classic,
That's right,
it's a no-brainer, really.
Good.
And then afterwards we are doing The final event for Scalarama for us is the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Rocky Horror, when's that?
That is on the 27th. On a Friday. Yeah, and it's going to be a bit of audience participation there, so expect to see some rice and toast and stuff. So that's going to be great.
Yes, that's right. And people dressed up, hopefully.
We hope
You're
people are
going
going to
to
dress
encourage
up.
that, I take it.
Absolutely, yes.
So you're encouraging people to dress up in costume for Rocky Horror. I take it you'll be doing that yourself.
Oh, maybe. I'm always just running the tech, so I'm like,
Right.
I'm the runner at the backs.
Well, don't look at me. 'Cause
You'll do a great Frankenfurter.
well, I'll could try. No, that sounds fantastic. You'll get, I'm sure, a big audience for Rocky Horror. That's
It's going to be
big
cool.
cult movie. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, but how about yourself, Paul? You're doing the Edinburgh Short Film Festival. So
Yes,
tell me a bit about the programme, Ollie.
Great programme this year, very diverse. We're everything from Taiwanese animation to drama from Ghana, documentary from Canada, and most points in between, really. So yeah, fantastic. We're really excited. We've got everything from this year's Oscar-winning short and Cannes-winning short to films being camcorded in the back streets of Edinburgh. So lots of guests coming. Full programme October 24th we start. We'll be hearing a bit more about that next month, I'm sure.
Oh, that sounds really, really cool.
So in this episode, as normal, we'll be reviewing a few films from September, starting with It Chapter 2, The Last Tree, a new British drama by Sholo Amu, and Harry Birrell presents Films of Love and War. We'll also be interviewing Dana from Gaze, who has her Scalarama event tonight, as well as Tamara from Take One Action Festival, which starts later this week. So the first review from this month's episode is the film It Chapter 2 by Stephen King. Amanda was traumatised by clowns when she was younger, so refused to review this film. But we have, luckily, Jim and Annie there are made of sterner stuff and braved the horror there to watch the film for you, and we'll review it now.
Right, so It Chapter 2 is the second part of It films. So the first called It Begins, second one It Ends. No, it doesn't. Anyway, it's directed by Andy Muschietti. He's the director of the first It film as well as a horror film Mama, but not much more, according to my research. The film takes place 27 years after the first one, where the main characters have grown up. They've forgotten all of their problems with Pennywise, and they get dragged back to Derry, or Londonderry if you're from the UK. To meet Pennywise once again. So after all my stupid jokes, Jim, what did you think about It Chapter 2?
So I had a strange experience with this film this week because I hadn't seen the first part, so I decided to watch it earlier in the week. So I've been on a bit of a, whatever it came out to, like 6-hour killer clown binge this week, basically. And I found it a bit much by the time I got to the end of it. The first one, of course, like wildly popular. It became non-adjusted for inflation, like the highest grossing horror film of all time, I think. But the second one, as you say, it picks up with them when they're adults, and at the conclusion of the previous film, they've made a pact to come back should Pennywise, the creature which takes the form of a clown, come back to their hometown of Derry, Maine. So it does start phoning. The guy who stayed there, Mike, has started phoning them all up, and they kind of reassemble. It is a very sprawling film. It's very long. I'd be lying if I said I really felt the length. I've seen a lot of complaints about the length, and I don't think I really felt it. What you do feel is it's a very choppy film. I think it's got quite a lot of very good bits to it, but they are bits. I don't always feel like what was happening on screen was progressing the story. It was maybe fleshing out the characters, which I quite liked, but in terms of momentum behind what was happening, I don't think it had a lot of it. There's a lot of good stuff going on, and there's a lot of good performances in there, which I'm sure we'll get to in a minute. But it is a very baggy film. I mean, we spoke on the last show about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which was loose and baggy and fairly undisciplined. This also is, just in a different way, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you're right though. The Once Upon a Time in Hollywood felt much longer, and when sitting in the cinema, that felt like I sat there for ages. And then the ending was great, but in this one, it was kind of like you didn't really feel the length. But after, like, once you think back, you're like, God, a lot of things happened, but nothing really got told. Was my kind of feeling of the film. Although I had great expectations, because I remember enjoying the first one, and I was like, oh, it's going to be a great, go into the cinema, have a bit of popcorn, have fun. And then I was kind of like really disappointed at what they had come up with. Maybe because they just had too much money and they could do whatever they wanted, because anybody's going to go see it anyway. So that's a bit disappointing. I felt as well that it lacks depth and substance. So it has a really good core idea of this like trauma, people who've lived through trauma in their childhood, needing to face it to kind of get over it and heal. But it's just a kind of base idea, and that's never really buffed out. It's never really beefed out. So it never really comes to the forefront. It's always just like a back thought of like, oh yeah, that's it, and nothing really ever happens in terms of that. They don't really heal, they don't really deal with the trauma. It seems like they just live through experiences that they had in chapter 1. Because I can remember like what this film did to me, and made me realize how much I actually liked it 1, because I didn't really like this one, but the It 1 was pretty good. But then I felt like there was a lot of similar kind of stories in it. So the way they, spoiler alert, kill the Pennywise in the end is a very similar way of how they kill it in the first film. It's like, did you just not remember how to get rid of it? And how is this time going to be different than the first time? It just makes no sense. And then there was so many different storylines. I hated the Native American storyline of like, yeah, they make some Native American charms and stuff like that, but that doesn't work. Why is it there? Like,
well, it's interesting you say that. So there's a couple of things you've said there that I really agree with. The first one being that it doesn't really do a huge amount with the whole confronting childhood traumas, right? Because it does try to do something with it, but the film doesn't, to me anyway, it feels like it doesn't really want to commit to whether this is a scare fest in terms of this is happening and this is just an event they have to deal with, or whether it's taking some sort and by it I mean it, right, is taking some sort of metaphorical form of their repressed childhood fears, memories, traumas. Yeah. Because a conceit at the start of the film is that everybody who has moved away from Derry, Maine, apart from Mike, the conceit is that they've all basically forgotten what happened, right? And it's not terribly clear to me like what the mechanism was for that. There's a bit of hand waving about, when you leave Derry you start to forget about it or something, but then, they're all going around with smartphones that have Facebook on them, so I mean, I don't really understand how that's meant. Now I understand the setting has been updated from the novel, but still, it doesn't really commit to whether is this happening, is it a metaphor for something, or is it a bit of both, right? And I think that's a bit jumbled. The other part of it is it's very similar to the first one actually, because I'm surprised. I mean, to me anyway, because part of where the choppiness in this film comes from is basically you have the kids. Well, I say the kids, I mean they're adults now, right? But you have them; they're all brought together, and then for plot reasons, capital P, capital R, right? Plot reasons, they need to go their own separate ways, right? In order to get artifacts for this ritual, right? Because this is how they're going to take on Pennywise, right? And we'll come back to that in a minute, because that's the other part of what you've said there that I kind of agree with. They all go their separate ways. They have their own separate story segments, right? But that's basically what happened in the first one as well, right? You've got like Eddie goes off and he's terrorized by Pennywise, and then you get Richie goes off and I think he's the one terrorized by a zombie, and it happens in the first one as well. And I feel like that's a deliberate decision in order to mimic what was going on in the first one, right? Because it's them reliving this experience almost, and by doing that, that's how they overcome it. But it does make it a bit repetitive. Yeah. And in terms of like some of the incoherence, right? So there's this whole thing about the ritual of chud, right? Right, which took me a few goes to like actually figure out what it was they were saying, because at first I thought it said the ritual of truth, and I've not read the novel, right? But apparently it's the ritual of chud. And it's all kind of like based on this idea of like, some people of Native Americans have banished Pennywise before. But I think that comes from the source material, right? Because I've not read it, but it's an enormous book. And if you read some of the plot details, I mean, honestly, I don't know what Stephen King was smoking when he came up with some of these mechanisms, but I'm surprised they've done as good a job adapting it as they had. I feel like they maybe needed just to be a little bit more brutal with it, though.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you're right. It comes from the source material, but like you said, it could have been handled much better, because this just makes into a very confusing film that just keeps going back and forth and never really ending up anywhere. It's like, because I think the original book kind of has those two storylines simultaneously, whereby this is like, well, the young kids come first and then it's the adults, but then we kind of have to go back to the kids as well. And then, but like you said, it repeats the same story. So there's a group of kids, they're a group of friends, and then there's like individual relationship stuff happening, but then they need to confront their fears alone. And then in this one, they confront it as adults, but nothing has really changed. And that changes nothing, that they confront them again, because they just get some token from the first film that then leads to nothingness. It's just, I think it's just weird. Again, probably something that we can blame Stephen King for more than we can blame the filmmakers. But I feel like maybe in script form, it could have been made into something a bit different.
I feel like they could have used their focus a little bit differently as well, right? Because in the first film, to me, I mean, it's good. I enjoyed it. The thing that was a standout for me, though, really was Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise, as the clown, right? He is really good. He's extremely... I'm not going to say scary, because like,
no, it's not scary at all. The film is not scary at all.
Yeah, I'm not going to say I was scared about. Like, I've not developed a phobia of clowns off the back of it, but it is a very creepy performance, right? And that was basically, I think, what makes it slightly different to. And I should point out, I haven't seen this in full, but based on what I have seen, that's what made it different to Tim Curry's performance in the 1990 miniseries. And Bill Skarsgård, is excellent in that role. I don't think they made as good use of him this time around. There's a lot more, spoiler alert, there's a lot more huge CGI versions of him.
Aye, yeah.
And it doesn't work as well. Like, there's a very effective scene, which... I'll talk about because it was in the trailer, where a young girl goes and finds him kind of like underneath the sports bleachers at a game. It's the bit where it went viral a little bit earlier in the year because he sounds creepily like Winnie the Pooh. Hello, But that segment, that was really very effective, and there was more stuff like that in the first film. I found they made better use for my money of Bill Skarsgård. There's that, and then another segment with Jessica Chastain, who's playing the adult Beverly. There's a sequence with her which is also very good. But apart from that, I don't think they made as good a use. Certainly not at the film's climax either. There are a couple of bits where, I've said they don't make good use of them, and I'm thinking of other bits where they did. But to me, it did lean heavily into... I think this one must have had a higher budget. It had to. It absolutely had to. Which is not to... imply the first one was made on a shoestring or anything like that, but it's definitely lent more into it, and there's a lot more spectacle in this one. And I feel like it's done that a little bit at the expense of the story progression and how the action relates to the characters.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. No, I don't find the CGI monsters scary. So, like, there's a lot of it. There's a lot of little creepy crawlers, and then there's like the climax thing of the spider thing. It's just, I think it's just unnecessary. It's just like you said, spectacle. You don't really need that in a horror film. Like, you could tell, horror is a different thing than just having really fancy looking spiders attack you. But then you mentioned the big budget on the CGI and stuff. I read they also de-aged the actors as well, the young actors, because it was 2 years between filming, and kids kind of grow up very fast. So I thought they would have just filmed, because they knew that there's going to be a chapter 2 coming up afterwards, that they would have filmed some of the stuff, or used some of the old stuff that they shot but didn't use in the first film to tell the story on the second one. But then what I read online is like they actually they shot the scenes with the kids and then just de-aged them, which is a bit, I don't know. It just sounds like they had way too much money in their hands, and they were putting up way too much effort in, way too much weight on the CGI part of it, and then making it look kind of cool. But then the story just doesn't carry the weight.
I think it's actually kind of reflecting the cast as well, because it's got they have really quite a cast for the adult version of the Losers Club, and in fairness to talk about something which is good about it, I think they're extremely well cast for my money. It does speak to some of the issues with the film, though. Like, for instance, this film, it's far more funny than it is scary. Far more. In particular, Bill Hader, who's playing the grown-up version of Richie, who's played by Finn Wolfhard, who I forget his character. I think he's called Mike in Stranger Things, but he's the kid in that. And he's fantastic. I thought he was absolutely great. And I think a lot of the performances are actually pretty good. I just don't think necessarily the events in the script back up that performance that well. Because it wants to make these points about metaphorically overcoming trauma, but then the final battle is basically a big CGI fest. I mean, basically, like at the end of the first film, and I'm not going to worry about spoilers for the first film. At the end of the first film, they basically beat Pennywise by beating it with sticks, right? I mean, it's not, it's quite, because of the build-up that it's had to that point with the characters, it has some sort of impact. But they do basically just beat him with sticks. Here, it's a similar sort of thing, but it's a lot grander in scale. And just to add to the kind of confusion with the 1980s nostalgia, if anybody's seen the third season of Stranger Things, it felt a lot like the climax of the third season of Stranger Things, to be honest. The completely different setting. Like, obviously this one isn't in a shopping mall, but I'm also a bit overdosed on 1980s nostalgia by the time I was done with this, because Stranger Things has been about for a few years now. It had its third season. I watched the first chapter of this on Tuesday. I watched this just the day before we came to talk about it here. Like, enough with the 1980s nostalgia.
You've invented a time machine. So.
So I think it's if you like the first one, I find it hard to believe you'll dislike this one. I don't think it's going to make as much of an impact.
No, I really dislike this one, and I think I'd like to say to everyone who hasn't gone and seen it, and it's like not sure if they should go and see it, maybe don't, because I don't want them to make a shit ton of money out of this, because like it's not worth it. I don't think it is. I think it's a botched job of something that they could have done way better at.
It's interesting you say it, because ostensibly this is meant to be the one with the adults, but there's a lot of segments with the kids. I actually think it could have even, and I say this, like, I wasn't blown away by the first one, but I did quite like it, but there are segments with the child actors in this one where if they put that in the first one rather than some of the other stuff, or even if they just extended the first one to the running time of this one, I actually think it would have worked a lot better. They'd still have had the option for the adult one, and I think it then might have actually improved that one, because then it would be more about a different time in life and making some sort of statement about that. But it's weird. It's almost like it kind of like devalues some of the stuff in the first one, because it ends up with this sort of like weird Rashomon type thing going on, where you see stuff happening from other perspectives, and you're like, well, actually that would have been good to know in that film. So yeah, it's a tricky one. I don't think it's quite stuck the landing. I think I was more ambivalent on it than you, but I was also more ambivalent on the first one, so maybe it's kind of like less of a come down for me, perhaps. But yeah,
exactly. Now, on that note, we got you a fortune cookie, or Dana got you a fortune cookie.
Oh boy!
And since that's a direct reference to it, Chapter 2 and the Chinese restaurant scene, let's go and see. Does it say Stephen couldn't?
Yeah. I'm a bit freaked out by the idea of opening a fortune cookie after that. It Chapter 2. Okay.
Luca didn't cut it.
Alright, here we go. It's never crowded along the extra mile. There you go. Put the effort in, kids. Put the effort in.
Is that the Royal Mile in After Fringe Festival?
Yeah, it's always crowded in Edinburgh. They never walked an extra mile in this city, I can tell you.
Great. Well, thanks to Annie and Jim there for braving the horrifying world of Pennywise and It, just to write that review. So the next review is The Last Tree, a new film by Shola Amu, reviewed by Amanda and Jim.
Yeah, so The Last Tree, as Paul just said, is a new film by writer director Shola Amu, his second film, partially autobiographical, actually. And the film revolves around Femi, a British boy of Nigerian heritage, first played by Ty Golding, and finally, as he grows older, Sam Adewunmi. He lives first with Mary, his foster mother, in a seemingly idyllic town in Lincolnshire. But then his birth mother comes back to take him away to London, and he has to move to the inner city of London. And most of the film is about his struggle to adapt, finding new friends, working through his relationship with his mother. Sometimes there's some quite harrowing segments about that. I found this film quite amazing, but very, very, like, the thing that hit me the most is how stunningly visual it is. So the cinematographer was Still Williams, and I just have to say, like, that was really a lovely film to watch. I always joke with my partner about close-ups and depth of field. He thinks anything with a great depth of field is a good film. And I don't always, but I think the use of depth of field in these shots mixed with like the sound design was really sort of gave that impression of someone who's dealing with a struggle sort of inside about reliance on other people, being, like independent and sort of their sense of identity. So I thought it really worked quite well. What did you think, Jim?
I would pretty much agree with all of that. I think one thing that struck me about the film, which really, I think, and there's some bits of it that work better than others, and I'm sure we'll get on to that, but overall I was very impressed with it, and it seems like a classic example of that whole show don't tell, right? There's not a lot of character development driven by, lengthy dialogue exchanges. There's not a lot of explaining going on. It very much tries to immerse you in Femi's experience, basically. We start off with this very, very sort of like yellow, sun-drenched childhood in Lincolnshire, and it seems very idyllic, and it's very much shot in that way. And then you contrast that with when he moves away from his foster home into basically inner city London with his mother, and it's a complete contrast. And when even there are little bits of dialogue to highlight that, they're very, very subtle. It's things like, he's been playing football with his friends in Lincolnshire and all the rest of it, and when he comes into the estate that they're living in London, first of all, it's shot at night, right? So it automatically looks a lot more kind of somber than where he'd left, and then it's just, they walk in, it's in complete silence, there's no dialogue, but then just as they go into the lift, the mother says, "Oh, watch out, there's pee there." And it's little things like that where it doesn't over egg it, and there's no histrionics in this film. There's no kind of impassioned, lengthy speeches about what have you done to me, right? There are flashpoints, of course there are, right, because it's an emotional story. But I think what you've hit upon in introducing the film there is that it is very visually driven, and also by the acting performances. Both Golding as the young Femi and Sam Adewunmi as the teenage Femi do excellent jobs. And the performances across the board are really great, and I was extremely impressed with it.
Yeah, I agree. I think I definitely particularly thought Sam's the older Femi was, drove the film, because I think it was probably 1/3 into it where you start to go into his role. Just watching his eyes and sort of like there's a lot of focus, close-ups, as we discussed about on him, and it's not overacted. It's really, really I felt his pain. I think it's maybe one of his breakout film for him to star in. So I think we'll probably see a lot from him in the future.
Yeah, I mean, basically everybody involved. I mean, even right from the start, the scene where he leaves his foster home to go to London, there's a goodbye scene with the foster mother and all the rest of it. Like, I really felt that scene. Mm-hmm. I really felt it. And then once, it's a fairly kind of like gently paced opening. But then once it gets to the London setup, it's weaving in a lot of different things in there. Because obviously you've got this idea of adjusting to somewhere new when you're a child, and kind of like upheaval at that time in life. Like, what sort of impact can that have on you? What sort of lasting effects can it have? You're also dealing with his experience as a person of colour in Britain, right? Because there's quite a lot of stuff about that. His friends tease one girl in the film because she is also black, but her skin is darker than theirs, and that's something to go. So there's a lot of stuff woven through about some universal experiences, some that are less so but are interesting to see put on screen. There's actually a lot going on in terms of the character interactions and what they're trying to communicate with it. How you provide for a family, because you can contrast his foster mother with his actual mother, and you can even contrast that with a friend who's kind of like running a bit of a criminal operation, tries to get Femi involved with it. He says that he's doing it for his family. So you can contrast all these three things. So there's kind of the responsibilities of parenthood as well, and what you should be giving to children. And I think on the whole, it balances them all really pretty well. It's not like it's a handbrake turn from one to the other. It is just very gently kind of like flows from one aspect of it to the other, and how they impact each other as well.
I think because we both saw it together at a press screening, but one of the things that does hit me though, and I wish is that is the ending to me, because there's a thing with me, because of 400 Blows is one of my favorite films, and I'm starting to see over and over again this story of a boy at the end of a beach considering his life, and I noticed that in Shane Meadows. I'm forgetting the name of the film. It's a TV series too, and particularly Moonlight as well, which was definitely a reference to 400 Blows. Yeah. So then there's some very similar sort of energy about this film, that you can't. It's almost hard not to sort of look at the way this was filmed and sort of see the similarities between Moonlight and obviously themes and stuff like that. So that was sort of slightly disappointing for me to sort of. That motif seems to just pop up too much for me, and maybe that's why I'm, because I'm on it, because it is my favorite film,
Yeah, I think that, as much as I like the film, I think that's a valid criticism. It's very obviously influenced for me with by Barry Jenkins' filmmaking, right? Now, because of the trajectory it's following, a young black man, the obvious comparison is Moonlight, and it definitely shares quite a lot of similarities with Moonlight. I actually think in some ways it reminded me more of If Beale Street Could Talk, and it was I don't know, it was something about the music. The only parts of it that don't particularly, it's not that they don't work, they just don't work quite as well, is, and I think your reference to somebody contemplating their life sitting on the beach plays into this. It leaps over into just a little bit too syrupy at a couple of points. Just a couple of points where the cinematography is a little bit too dewy-eyed and the soundtrack is a little bit too earnest and string-driven. They're fleeting, it gets away with it, but if you were going to nitpick at anything, I think that would be the thing to nitpick at. It every so often it just pushes something a little bit too far when it doesn't need to, because the performances are all very naturalistic, particularly when you're in the London segments. The shooting style kind of backs that up as well, certainly when they're not doing the close-ups. So it didn't really need to do that, and I think if I was going to change anything about it, maybe I'd dial a couple of those segments back a bit. But overall, the way that the acting plays with the script and also the way it's shot, I think it all blends together to make really a very effective character-driven story.
Yeah, I agree. And I was trying to remember the name of it, but it's This Is England by Shane Meadows, which which is again this idea of a young boy sort of contemplating and their identity in life and stuff like that. So perhaps using that trope a little bit too much, guys. So it's supposed to be taking place in the 80s, right? Because is that why there's the Cure song sort of coming through? Or I know it's semi-autobiographical, but I couldn't really tell a time.
It's not going to, well, because they've got, so there is a subplot with the sort of like this criminal gang, and they give them what is a fairly old-looking mobile phone, so it's definitely it's like sort of contemporary. 90s, yeah. I think, but given the semi-autobiographical nature, I kind of placed it like early noughties, late 90s, something like that. It's certainly not like super contemporary like right now, because obviously he's wandering around with a CD player,
right,
a portable CD player. But I'm glad you mentioned The Cure, actually, because it's another one of these themes which is dealt with in the film, and I think it's done very well. Like, one part that really stood out to me is, as we said, so Femi is listening to The Cure through his headphones, and his friend comes up to him and goes, what are you listening to? And he says Tupac.
Yeah.
Right, so it's kind of this wrestling with your own identity and how you can't even really be honest about it, even with kind of, your peers at the time. And it kind of captured that teenage experience very well. Like, I even had some sympathy for the whole, right, so the character's full first name is Olufemi, right, but he's known as Femi. So of course, every time a register is taken in the school, he has to say, my name's Femi. It says Olufemi on my register. I knew so many kids that went through that at school, and it's like incredibly frustrating. So it's this idea of not being able to assert your identity and why. And they weave lots of different reasons in this film, but it captures a lot of stuff extremely well, and just as I've said earlier, just through little things like that, it really fleshes out wonderfully.
Yeah, on a similar note, my mom put Mandy on all of my teachers' things in elementary school, and I had to tell everybody, no, it's not Mandy, it's Amanda. And it was quite frustrating.
See, it's the opposite. You're going for the slightly more forward, because of course, so I'm Jim, but my name's James, right? But I never ever go by it. You've kind of gone the opposite way there.
But I feel I had that same conversation. They're like, but it says right here, and it's like, come on, I'm asserting my name is now Amanda.
Yeah.
So our next review is Harry Birrell Presents Films of Love and War by the director Matt Pinder, reviewed by Amanda and Jim.
And Annie.
Yeah, hey. Anyway, Harry Birrell Presents Films of Love and War is like you said, directed by Matt Pinder and co-produced by Karina Birrell, who is the granddaughter of Harry Birrell. It's a story of an amateur filmmaker, Harry Birrell, who used to capture his life on camera. He had an extensive library of archive films, ranging from home videos he shot of his kids growing up to stock that he shot at the Second World War. And it's the war stock that the film mostly concentrates on. It's narrated by Rob Stark, there's Richard Madden. And it's a good length of a film. It's about an hour and a half. It's going through a lot of what he went through in the war. He was stationed in India, Burma, and Nepal with the Second World War, fighting against Japan. So he mostly has color film, which is interesting of the time. And he was, I believe the film says, the only person in India, I think, at that time who had that. He had a good reason. He can't remember what it was exactly, but he convinced the army to give him a film stock, a color film stock, because he could tell the difference between fake trees and real trees that the enemy would be planting on the war. What do you call it? Fighting grounds.
Battlefields.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah. But yeah, I like the aspect of it being this kind of unearthed, rarely seen archive footage that the general audiences would not have a chance to see, because it was his own home library, and I don't believe it was in any kind of like a National Library of Scotland before they actually started digitizing some of this footage and gave it forward. It's not at all badly put together. Like I said, it's a good length of a film. It's not too long. It packs a bit of an emotional punch in the way it shows the grandchildren and children seeing their elders in wartime, in actual live footage, and not just photography, but in video as well. It has a different kind of effect on you. But it's an all right film. I wasn't a massive fan. It got voted as the winner of the Audience Award in Glasgow Film Festival. Is now going on a film tour, and it's worth a watch if you're into that kind of stuff. And the archive footage itself is beautiful, and it's amazing to see something that you would not otherwise get to see, which is like a very first-hand experience on trenches and stuff like that in India. But I don't know, Jim, tell me a bit about what you thought about it.
I thought it was very well made. I'm not. I mean, we'll come to this in a minute, and I think you kind of alluded to it at the end. I'm not sure how much it needed to be a feature-length documentary, if I'm being honest. But it is pretty fascinating. I mean, some of the images that Harry Birrell has caught during his career in the armed forces are absolutely incredible. You know, and like he was sent with a battalion to explore parts of Myanmar, Burma at the time, which apparently hadn't been mapped and things like that. And basically, he has an enormous amount of footage from all over. So it's kind of fascinating to see that. As you say, a lot of it is presented in colour, which is really quite unusual. So it shares a little bit of similarity with some other documentaries that have come out. You know, you had Peter Jackson's colorized history of the First World War and things, or was it colorized or was it colour film?
I think it was colorized. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So it has some similarities there, but it's really quite well done. I mean, I think the editing is fantastic because it really presents a very coherent story of this man's life, obviously, you know, traversing significant moments in both his life but also the history of the world as well. So it's very well done in that respect. It's very well edited. It actually brought to mind something that we reviewed on this show, right, as a kind of a counterpoint to how this is where I think it's been done well. But a couple of shows ago we reviewed a documentary called Armstrong, which was about Neil Armstrong, and again it featured kind of home videos, speaking with relatives and all the rest of it, and it was, I mean, it wasn't good. It wasn't good, right? It wasn't without merit, but it wasn't good. This is kind of the other side of that coin, where I think it is done very well. I think it's very engaging, and it's an interesting thing to see. Where I think it kind of falls down a little bit is I'm not really sure whether it needed to be a feature-length documentary. Like it feels to me like the sort of thing which is important to see and is important for people to be able to take in, but I don't think it needed to be in the form of a feature-length documentary, if I'm being honest. I think it will find its natural home as a, you know, something that will screen on television, maybe the odd kind of like special screening in cinemas. I don't think it needs to be seen in a cinema, but really I'm not going to grouse about that part of it too much, because I think the sort of footage it's displaying is fascinating, and I think, especially seeing as it's going on a cinema tour, I think it's a thing that's worth supporting, and, you know, this preservation of film history is an important thing to do. So I think it's a film worth supporting. I don't think it's the best documentary I've ever seen, but it is extremely interesting, and I think it really is worth a look when it goes on that tour.
Sure. Amanda, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the archive footage itself was just an amazing gem of like stuff that like I would want to watch over and over and over again. The way that I feel like they presented the film through this uncovering of it was not anything novel or anything new. And as somebody who has, you know, made films with this kind of style, I think it was like the Men in the I forgot the name again of another documentary that sort of came up with this idea of like animating all of this old sort of make it look oldie mappy sort of, you know, titles and stuff like that. Really drives me a little nuts when you see it over and over and over again. It's a bit repetitive. Don't fake it. It's there. It exists. It's beautiful. And I think they had to push you along that story a little bit too long. It might have been an interesting presentation of this archive film in in another way. And I feel like if it had been slightly more innovative, I would have liked it better.
Well, one way or the other, I think. I mean, it could have been more innovative. I don't think that the framing device, which is around, I think she produced the film as well, Karina Birrell, his granddaughter. And as you say, there's kind of this framing device, which is a conceit of, you know, they've unearthed it in the shed, which I don't think is actually really all that true either. Like, I mean, like Harry Birrell, I think, was known as a good amateur filmmaker. He had a screening room in his house and things like that. So that part of it doesn't really work for me. There are other bits where, so Richard Madden, who, you know, as Annie said in the intro, most people will know as Rob Stark. He was also the lead in Bodyguard. He does a very good job narrating this, and not that I want to keep beating that Armstrong documentary with a stick, right? But like that had a Harrison Ford voiceover where he just sounded completely bored. Richard Madden, I think his narration here does a very good job because it's very measured. It's not very up and down, but it's got that kind of like warm, welcoming tone to it, right? Which is exactly what you need for this. And he's narrating Harry's diaries, and there were bits where they let it speak for itself, or they have imagery to back it up from the archive films. And then there were other bits where they animated the words kind of in the style of these kind of like music lyric videos.
Yeah.
Those bits didn't really work for me. I don't think it really needed it because they had quite a strong narration from Richard Madden. I don't think it really needed it. So there's bits and pieces that don't really work, and I feel like that was it trying to kind of get shoehorned into a feature film kind of format.
Did it start with a woman narrating it though, which I thought was a bit...
Yeah, well, the book ended with his granddaughter doing bits of it. Like talking about her grandfather, I think, where they found it, this sort of thing. So the only bit, that she's in it like a reasonable amount. And obviously they talk to a couple of people as well. But any bits where it's Harry's diaries, it's narrated by Richard Madden.
Yeah, I think I just see 5 documentaries I've already seen in this. I mean, in some ways it's Saving Brinton, in some ways it's The Stories We Tell, and in some ways it's Armstrong or Kid Stays in the Picture, and that's where like we have a precious archive, and perhaps finding a new way to tell that uncovering of an archive I would have enjoyed more. Although it's worth seeing just for the footage alone.
Yeah, the footage is incredible. No.
So I'm here with Dana from Gaze. Hi Dana, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Paul.
Not at all. And you've been here in Edinburgh for a few years now, doing screen exhibition. What's your background there, and tell me a little bit more about Gaze as well.
Yeah, I firstly come here to study in Edinburgh Uni Film Exhibition Curation as Amanda as well. And so after I graduated, I stay here and start working as a freelancer, doing some independent film screenings here. And I started Gaze just last year, which is... I've got a website, I've got film pages. So basically we organize monthly screening event, mainly focus on Chinese language films from Taiwan, Hong Kong, China, but mostly from Taiwan at the moment because I'm from Taiwan, so I have more friends and people who can get me films from there. Great.
And you're doing an event at Scalarama, which is on tonight. At the Banshee Labyrinth, is that right?
Yeah, at Banshee Labyrinth, they open at 7, so people can come in at 7, but the screenings should start at 7:30ish.
7:30, right.
Yeah.
And it's a film called The Vengeance of the Phoenix Sisters, a 1960s black and white film. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It's a wuxia film. Well, wuxia is the kung fu films, and it homage to the Dragon Inn by director King Hu, which is one of the very important wuxia film in the Chinese cinema history, and also in the film because the director himself, he was the technician on working in the Dragon Inn crew as well. So there's some part that he's paying tribute to the Dragon Inn, like one of the main characters, female but dressed up as a man, something like that, like a similar plot. Yeah.
Cool. And is it a film you've always wanted to screen, or is it just something you had an opportunity to show to Edinburgh audiences?
Actually, as I mentioned, me and a friend who's Lucas, he's a director, he's also Taiwanese. We have this monthly screening going on, and Vengeance of the Phoenix Sisters is one of our monthly program. And since September, there's Korama coming on, so I thought, we can put it in September because it's a kind of special, like black and white wuxia, and it's a Taiwanese language one instead of Mandarin Chinese, so slightly different from the Chinese films you see here. Yeah. So
it's quite going to be quite new. Is this the first time you think it's been screened in Edinburgh?
I think so. To be honest, I think it's the first time it's been screened in Scotland.
Oh right, it's a Scottish premiere. That's great. Now it's a kung fu action film, is it? Or horror? Right.
It's a kung fu action film, and I'm not.
Do you associate those with Taiwanese cinema? I mean, is that
the Taiwanese film, Taiwanese language film was quite popular back in the 60s. They've made like they've made the highest time they've made more than 100 films in a year in Taiwanese language.
Okay.
And but then later on, because of it's about the history in Taiwan now. Later on, because the KMT government, which is they come from China and they speak Chinese, they don't want people to speak Taiwanese anymore. So they stop the Taiwanese language film production. They want everyone to speak Chinese, so they start to produce films in Chinese language.
So I suppose in some senses the Taiwanese language film is a political...
Yeah, because Taiwanese language, well, I call it Taiwanese language, but it should be a dialect in all the Chinese languages because China is so big. And so it's some sort of political issue, so they stopped producing Taiwanese film until 90s maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. So, is this kind of typical of Taiwanese film? I mean, is this the kind of film that would be appreciated commonly in
it would
Taiwanese
be
audiences?
appreciated commonly, I think. Both the Taiwanese people, Chinese people, or even international, because it's a kung fu film. People love kung fu film, so I think should be appreciated by internationally. So it should be okay. Yeah.
And is that kind of an industry in Taiwan? Kung fu films, is that something that they made a lot of? Or?
Yeah, still back in the 60s and 70s, kung fu film were quite popular until Hong Kong studios taken over. The Hong Kong kung fu film become more popular than the Taiwanese productions. Yeah.
That's great. So, thanks for coming along today. Hopefully the event will go well at the Banshee Labyrinth, is that right?
Yeah, it's at Banshee Labyrinth tonight. Door opens at 7 because Banshee opened at 7, and we're hoping to start the screening 7:30ish.
7:30 at the Banshee, and that sounds great. Is there a ticket price?
No, it just pay as you like, some donation at the door.
Okay, that's cool. And if somebody was interested in Gaze and the film tonight, is there a website or somewhere they could go to get more information?
You can look up Gaze Cinema on Facebook, and then there's a link to the website.
Great stuff. Well, good luck with the screening. I look forward to the event, and best wishes.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Thanks. So I'm here with Tamara from Take One Action Festival, which starts tomorrow, the 18th of September, and runs right throughout the month. So, Tamara, welcome to the studio.
Thank you, Paul.
That's all. Can you tell us a little bit about Take One Action? I'd love to know, actually, how the festival came about.
Of course. So Take One Action was set up in 2008 by a gentleman called Simon Bateston. And Simon had been working in two very different fields at the time. He'd been working as a film editor for a while, and then he got involved with international development. And he went to Sierra Leone at the time that the country held its first free elections, and witnessed a vibrancy within the civil society there that he had not seen in the UK. And upon his return, wondered how one might be able to generate more involvement within civil society in Scotland specifically. And he was involved with a film called Black Gold. I don't know if you ever came across it, a film about coffee, which really put the issue of fair trade coffee and the working conditions of in coffee plantations, brought them into the limelight and forced companies like Starbucks to rechange their practices. And that experience made him think a lot more about what film could do to engage people around issues that matter to us all on the planet. And that's how he set up the festival. He went to Filmhouse, asked them if they'd be interested, and they embraced it and have supported it ever since.
That's great. And what's your role in the festival this year?
I'm the director.
The director.
There's only two of us in the organisations who work throughout the year, my colleague Kirsty Somerville, who's the festival producer, and myself.
Great. So you're all ready to launch on the 18th. What do you think are some of the highlights that people can expect to see this year?
Oh, it's always hard when people ask you to pick your favourites, like your children.
It's quite a big brochure. There's quite a lot going on. So it must be hard
we pack quite a lot over the 12 days of the festival, and obviously it takes us a whole year to bring that programme together. So we're very attached to every single one of these titles. But there's lots of different things that people can get involved with, and can enjoy. I think that's one of the things that I appreciate about the festival, is that even though 98% of our program is documentaries. The documentaries themselves as a genre have evolved so much that you can enjoy very different types of narratives and very different types of cinema within our program. So, for example, our opening film, Push, is very much an investigative documentary around the global housing crisis. And it's an issue that's extremely topical, and it just so happens that our festival opens tomorrow on Scottish Housing Day, which is focusing this year on the issue of housing as a human right. So this feels really pertinent, and it's, as many people who listen to your show will be aware of, Edinburgh and Glasgow and other parts of Scotland are cities where homelessness and issues around housing are becoming more and more problematic. So I hope that the fact that we're screening this film within that context, and that we've got people from Shelter, from Oxfam, from Unison taking part in the conversation, but also we bring people from Living Rent, from Unity, who are campaigning groups really active on the ground, can give people a better sense of what the reality is currently in these cities and what we can do to reclaim housing as a human right, as it should be. But we've also got films like Ambessa, which is an absolutely stunning piece of cinema, documentary about a young boy in Ethiopia who lives on the outskirts of Addis Ababa. And though the film can be described as a film about urbanization and development, it's actually the portrait of an incredibly curious, inquisitive, intelligent and sensitive boy, and of his inner world. And the documentarian manages to bring that inner world to life on film. And I think films that can do that can get you to understand something really complex, something that involves macroeconomics, but also a child's imagination is fabulous. And also another type of event that we're organizing on Friday, we've got the screening of a film called Soilism, which again is more of an investigative documentary, but we're screening it with 3 short films from different parts of the world, which will no doubt please you
Yes,
as a short film programmer. Yeah, so we're screening short films from Peru, from Colombia, from Switzerland, and we've got a documentary into animations. And then perhaps most importantly for a lot of people's bellies, we're screening the film with a meal from Slow Food. And then the discussion will involve Alex Renton, who's a really interesting and knowledgeable journalist and author who wrote a book called Planet Carnivore. We've got a representative from Nourish Scotland, who are actually based in the same premises as this very studio. And we've got a representative from Unison as well. So it's a very full evening. You've got food for the belly, food for the thought, and then connection, which is a big thing for us.
Sounds great, very involving. And now you're taking the festival out of Edinburgh and travelling around Scotland, I understand. So how's that working out this year? What place are you going to?
So the festival itself has been for several years, for many years now, taking place in both Glasgow and Edinburgh at the same time, which is interesting logistically, because you find yourself spending a lot of time on ScotRail trains. So we have screenings in both cities every night, and sometimes during the day as well. And then beyond the dates of the festival, so we've got 18th to 29th in Edinburgh and Glasgow. Then in October, we're visiting Stirling for the first time during the Central Scotland Documentary Festival. We're taking the film Scheme Birds to Stirling, which I can't recommend highly enough. It's a fascinating documentary about youth, about exclusion, about the choices that young women face today in areas of deprivation in Scotland. It's incredibly beautiful, and it's also very respectful of its protagonist, who's given a lot of agency during the film. Well, as you can hear, I really love it. It's a film that we co-hosted the UK premiere of during the Edinburgh Film Festival, but we're really pleased to bring it back to Edinburgh and Glasgow. We're taking it to Stirling in October, but also to Dundee as part of Dundee University's Festival of the Future, and also to Loch Gilphead. So it's our first Screen Machine screening.
Oh, yeah.
Got 2 films that we're taking with the Screen Machine, actually. So as well as Scheme Birds, which is going to Loch Gilphead, we've got a beautiful, really involving documentary called Eating Up Easter, which is screening on Saturday the 28th of September in Edinburgh. But then it's going to be travelling with the Screen Machine to places like Gia, to Benbecula, to 1 or 2 of the Orkney Islands. And because the film focuses on focuses on Easter Island in the Pacific, and looks at how massive development and tourism is impacting the indigenous population of the island. It's incredibly relevant to people in Scotland, especially island populations in Scotland. So we're really chuffed that we can take this film.
And is this the first time you've gone to the islands or to these kind of...
No, Take One Action used to tour quite extensively in Scotland, but it was a model that we struggled to sustain by ourselves, just because we're such a small organisation. especially once you become parents. So Simon, who created the organisation, became a parent. I am a parent myself. It becomes quite difficult to be away for a long time.
And do you find these audiences in these places, how do they react? Do they react differently to urban audiences, or do you think you're exposing them to quite radical film? So I'm just wondering.
But the audiences there are as diverse as audiences here. Like people come with very different expectations. Sometimes they might be a bit surprised about the way that we organise our events, but their knowledge of current affairs and their appetite for art is just as big as anyone here. And sometimes they're even more grateful than people here because they don't get to enjoy it quite as often. And I think, a key aspect of what we do, a key aspect of what all festivals do, is to bring people together. We can all watch an amazing array of films now online. I mean, more than ever in my lifetime. You can watch amazing documentaries from your home. But what we do through festivals is to actually bring people together. And for Take One Action, that connection is absolutely key, because I think there's a massive difference between awareness and understanding. And when you watch a film with other people, when you get to pick it apart, whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, but if you get to pick it apart with others and you get to really understand what your relationship is to these issues that are explored on screen, it makes a massive difference. Mm-hmm. And if you want to be active, if you want to change the world, you need to go beyond that awareness, and you really need to understand how you can impact those issues and what routes to action you can find. And if we can connect people better to other campaigners, then we're doing a really good job.
Great. I know you have a very unique way of organising your debates and Q&As and so on at your events. Can you tell me a bit about your approach to dealing with interviews and question and answer sessions?
Yeah, of course. So one of the things that we've done for quite a while now, and to some people it might seem gimmicky, but we've stopped calling them panel sessions or panel discussions, because we acknowledge that a lot of people who come to see the films that we screen are already very aware of the issues that these films explore. Some of them are very knowledgeable themselves. So we know that there is knowledge in the room, and I guess inspired by theories of popular education, we want to ensure that people actually get to be active and to contribute to themselves, not just to be listening. Cinema is quite a passive activity. Mm-hmm. So if you've got a 90-minute film, and then on top of that you slap a 40-minute discussion where people are just sitting and listening, where's the participation? So we really wanted to make our events more participatory, and also just starting from the very moment that we wonder who to bring into the room. We work with our volunteers in trying to identify organizations and groups that may have something really interesting to say. So we bring our volunteers into that role, and then almost every film that we present has an organization that supports the screening, and those organizations themselves bring a host of knowledge around the context in which those issues might be understood in Scotland. And that's also very important to us, to bring that local context to bear on the way that we explore the issues that the films themselves explore.
And do you have a lot of guests coming this year?
Well, I think I've been emailing them for the last few days to just confirm everything. So I think we've got more than 70 or 80 contributors in total. So yeah,
we're not all on stage at the same time.
No, I don't think the cinemas would like it, and the audience will get to say anything. No, we've got lots of different types of people. Mm-hmm. We've got, I've got an astrophysicist who's also happens to be a sword wielding martial artist who's taking part in an event on Friday in Glasgow. We've got representatives from obviously Unison, Christian Aid, Oxfam, Mercy Corps, with whom we're working for the first time. And gender, who are supporting our sister strand, because women's empowerment has become a massive focus of our festival over the last few years. And then we've got lots of individuals who are working either as freelancers or who are campaigners, really dedicated campaigners. It's really good to welcome such a diversity of
it's also a wealth of knowledge there for people to get hold of. So you're opening on the 18th. What's the opening event?
So Push, this film about the housing crisis, is screening in Edinburgh on the 18th, in Glasgow on the 19th. And as I said, it's going to be presented in partnership with Oxfam and Unison for home homelessness and the housing crisis. It's not just about homelessness, it's also about cities becoming unaffordable, and the way that the very makeup of our cities is changing, and the reasons behind that. And the reasons behind that are, in a large part, driven by global finance, and it is too rarely spoken about. So as I said, the film is screening on Scottish Housing Day. I think it's something that is affecting so many people, and it's going beyond the cities now, because obviously rural populations have changed tremendously over the last decades, and it's not something that's only affecting people living in London or New York. It's affecting all of us.
Great. So it's 18th to 20th of September, opening at the Film House, I think.
Yep,
Yeah.
first
And
Film House.
It's quite a long run, isn't it? 11 days, and you're
12
doing.
days, yeah.
Yeah. So that's quite hard work, I think.
It can be, but at the same time, I mean, how often do you get to do something you love?
That's right. Not
like
very
that?
often.
No, and I've had the privilege of working for Take One Action for. It's going to be my 8th festival,
Wow. Okay.
and to be honest, there's nothing else I'd rather do.
Great. And for people wanting to know more about Take One Action Film Festival, where can they go online to have a?
So they can check our website. It's probably the best place to go, takeoneaction.org.uk. They can also find information about our screenings on some of our venues' websites. So Filmhouse and GFT, you can book tickets directly. All of the tickets can be purchased through Take One Action. One of the things I'd like to mention, if it's okay, is like we have been increasing our commitment to diversity and inclusion over the last few years, and as part of that, we recognise the barriers that people face in buying tickets. So all our non-cinema venues now have pay what you can tickets sliding scale. And we don't ask for, there's no burden of proof, so you don't have to tell us whether you're claimant or whether you're in receipt of any kind of benefit. You just decide for yourself what's manageable for you financially. And we also offer £5.50 tickets in cinema venues across all of our cinema venues across Aberdeen, Edinburgh, Glasgow, and in Inverness for people under the age of 25 or 25 and under. And then we also have a community ticket fund. So if anyone's listening and is either working with or volunteering with groups of people who face barriers to access, we have free tickets available for these groups. They just have to contact us and tell us what film they want to go and see. We've got fantastic access and engagement coordinator this year called Alison Smith. And also, one more thing, because it's been really important for us along those lines, is that we now have sign language interpretation at both our opening and closing films in both Edinburgh and Glasgow. And we have 8 of the titles that we're screening this year out of the 20 features are captioned for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, but also for people who struggle with English, perhaps. So we're hoping that this is going to make it a lot more accessible for a lot of people.
Great. Well, that sounds fantastic. Well, thanks for coming along, Tamara. We wish you all the best with Take One Action Film Festival. And we'll look forward to seeing the films and see you later. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Well, that's a wrap for the September edition of the Cinetopia radio show. Annie, what's happening at this month's Cinetopia networking night?
Yeah, that's going to be on the 26th, on a Thursday, back in Brewdog, Lothian Road. So if you want to meet us in person after listening to us every month, come over. Also, if you're a filmmaker, if you're looking to crew your next production or anything like that, come and have a chat, have a drink, and meet other filmmakers and film enthusiasts in Edinburgh. So that's 26th.
Great, that sounds fantastic. So, thank you also to Dana and Tamara for joining us today. We are looking forward to coming back next month, where we'll be reviewing more films and talking about, of course, the Edinburgh Short Film Festival and the Cambridge Film Festival. The Cinetopia radio show is produced by myself, Paul Bruce, director of the Edinburgh Short Film Festival, Amanda Rogers, co-founder of Cinetopia and RPP Productions, Jim Ross, managing editor of Take One magazine, a UK-based magazine reviewing films from festivals around the world, and Anni Asikainen, co-founder of Cinetopia. And thanks to all our guests and to you for listening. So for more information about Cinetopia and our partners, go to cinetopiahub.com or follow us on social media at Cinetopia Hub. Goodbye for this month.
Bye-bye.